an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle Book 8, Wintersteel, Chapters 8 and 9. As much as I wanted to read 10, I didn't do it. In these chapters, Lindon is such a maniac that he doesn't even realize what a complete fucking maniac he is. Everyone around him can tell, even Dross can tell, but Lindon doesn't seem to even notice. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Andy for commissioning this episode. Hi to Ofer and George who are in the chat. Greetings. So, guys. I have so much to say. I'm just going to start at the beginning. Oftentimes I will open up with some comments in general. I'm not going to do that this time. I'm going to talk in order. Hi, Jan and Jake. All right, so Chapter 8 begins with Lindon asking for access to the hunting grounds. And evidently this is like something that's just sort of available. I don't know if we've heard the hunting grounds mentioned before. I feel like we have, but it's not ringing a bell with me. And it turns out like the Underlord grounds are closed for maintenance, which makes sense because they're about to try and get shit ready for the end of the tournament. But we have several True Gold locations available. And they had also received another shipment of Hunger Madra, which Lindon purchased in the name of the Akura family. The Nine Cloud Court had provided him with Madra to maintain his remnant arm all this time. As part of his body, the limb required less maintenance than a normal construct would have. It took most of its sustenance from his pure Madra. But since he didn't generate Hunger Madra in his spirit, he did need to supplement it every once in a while, especially when he trained it to its limits, as he intended to do tonight. All right, so I'm going to be honest with everybody here. And if y'all have like some sort of resource that you would like to direct me to, I am open to that. But as much as I am loving this series, loving it, as much as I am deeply invested in what happens to all my characters and the relationships between them and yada, 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 as much as I think that the magic system is really cool and interesting, I have a confession to make. I don't entirely get it. And it's not because Will White is not good at explaining it. I wouldn't say that. It's more that isn't a priority for me to understand personally. Because I just sort of take for granted that whatever he's telling me as it's happening is like correct or will be proven to be wrong by somebody later, and I don't need to worry now if it's right or wrong. Overall, there hasn't been a lot about the magical system that has needed my attention in a way that feels like I'm supposed to be figuring things out. Does that make sense? Because like, there are some books and series where the way that magic works is sort of part of like an overall mystery sometimes, or part of motivations for certain people and the way that they are as human beings because of how, like, this universe, magic is much more a really cool, interesting tool that really in a lot of ways could be replaced with another version and most of the story would remain similar. And so I haven't worried too much about figuring out exactly the way that everything interacts with each other, the ways in which certain things need maintenance and others don't. I get the broad strokes, and I have felt like up to this point, that has been enough. We have cores, which generate Madra. Madra being essentially like types of power, which can be used on paths. And aura, which is like produced by living things, or not even living, because we can do like sharp and whatnot. Aura is produced by objects and people and animals, and can be drawn in and collected to be processed into Madra, which can be used to fuel magic. That is all I really, truly get. And then, of course, there's Madra channels, which are how you cycle Madra, and the cycling sort of gets it sort of refines it and condenses it to make it from something that's very crude and into what is really needed to like make it useful. Evil One in the chat is saying aura is like crude oil, Madra is like refined gasoline. Exactly. And so this I get, but I do feel like there are a lot of subtleties to the way this works that get thrown around in the story that I don't get. And mostly I've been fine with that. Or it's not even that I don't get it. It's simply that I haven't slowed down enough because of a lack of interest, really. I don't care when it comes down to it a lot of the time how certain things work. I trust that Will White knows how they work. I feel very confident he has a complete idea how they work. And I think that speaks to the trust that I have in him as an author, because I gotta be honest, that you can't say that about every like series out there. There are so many authors who don't seem to have a good grasp on their own magical system, or they play really fast and loose with it and decide that they're going to like completely throw something out the window that has been true for a long time in order to make something happen that they have wanted to have happen. And there's a difference between doing that in a way that feels cheap because you're just ignoring your own magic system, and doing what Will White did in these books, which is, oh, the people that raised Lindon and taught him have no idea what they're talking about, which is a very specific thing, and that's different. But yeah, I am feeling as we go forward, especially in this section, because it is so focused on how Lindon is creating techniques. This is the first time I've really felt like I wish I understood this a little bit better. I wish I had a better grasp on it. Jake says the Abaddon Archive website is the collection of World of Will answers and clarifies a lot of stuff. And Andy responds, also a lot of spoilers, though. Jake says he doesn't think there are Wintersteel spoiler answers. I am not going to take that risk, but if anybody has like something very specific that they want to send me, feel free, unspoiledpodcast@gmail.com. And Jake says Be Amphius on YouTube also has a theory/explanation videos for people. Okay, well, I don't want to risk that either, but if there's one that you know is clean of spoilers, you can send it direct. I don't want to just search for things, though. That's how I get my heart broken. That's happened before. But yeah, so this is, like I said, something that hasn't worried me too much. It's I feel sort of about the magical system like I do about the Abaddon, where I believe that it makes sense. I trust that it makes sense, and I'm just not preoccupied with it, you know? So, all right. That said, let's see. So what he decides to do, signs and glowing constructs provided guidance and direction to those who were permitted access. Usually entrants were charged a fee based on the remnants they hunted down, but Lindon was permitted certain privileges as an uncrowned competitor. When he first cornered a remnant without anyone around, he pounced on it. It was a pink fluid storm remnant in a shape that reminded him of a gecko, and it kept repeating a series of buzzes that sounded like the word grapefruit, which I really want this to like mean something later. I doubt it does, but that is so specific and strange. So he uses the empty palm, and then it begins to disperse, and he holds out his remnant arm and asks for Dross's help, and replicates the method that Northstrider showed him, and the storm gecko explodes. And it says Lindon wasn't too surprised. He had known he would need to make modifications to Northstrider's technique. The binding in his arm had been altered by the addition of the archstone, but it had changed further as he had used and fed it over the last months. As a part of his body, it grew organically, so while the principles of the original consume technique would help him, they could only be guidelines. He had to adapt it himself. He could have drained the remnant dry of its Madra on his first attempt. He had been doing that for years, but he was trying to take everything. Which I do understand this, because we saw how and we see later when he succeeds in this, how he drains I don't remember what the beast is exactly that he tracks down, but it's with the help of Little Blue that he manages to take all of these different types of Madra and disperse it to different places. And so some of it goes to his like lifeline, various places. And that is the key to what he's trying to do, because if that is accomplished, it's more than just like, oh, here's something that's a quick source of Madra of whatever type. It's here's something that can be a source of like power for me in a way that reacts with my body as if it were some sort of like natural treasure, you know, like one of the fruits, for example, from like the very first book. So he tries this a bunch of times, and eventually he gets like sore in his spirit and his body and has to drop it and go to bed. And then he asks for this book, The 7 Principles of Pure Madra, by the Script Lord, and begins reading it, and then goes to the Soulsmith Foundry. It says, the next few days fell into a rhythm as Lindon brushed up on areas of improvement that he had neglected while competing in the tournament. He spent the bulk of his time on the consume technique, but when he or Dross needed rest, or when he had exhausted his possibilities, he worked on other areas. Lindon would go to the hunting grounds in the morning and practice consuming remnants, spend midday studying theory as he and Dross recovered, then practice soulsmithing in the evenings. So we find out that he's like working on his armor. He's doing a lot. He's keeping himself very busy. And he's feeling pretty good about everything, because he starts to get to a point where they have practiced enough that he's feeling like they're really narrowing down a way to make this all work. And he gets an idea for a new technique. He had seen other sacred artists use ruler techniques to duplicate boundary fields, controlling aura to create certain effects inside a radius. Why couldn't he flood an area around himself with pure Madra, preventing anyone else from using techniques? Which is honestly a pretty dope idea. I love this, because it's sort of like a more expansive version of, like, Athan makes a pure Madra armor for himself, and while it's awesome in terms of the function of armor, Lindon's looking to like rob people of their power if they get too close, which is like, granted, that leaves you open to attack from farther away, but what a cool idea if somebody doesn't know that about you and they come running at you with, you know, an enforced, for example, what was it that Kiro had as a weapon? Was it an axe? And like when he wasn't enforced, he couldn't even lift it. Was that him or was that Daji? But yeah, like if all of a sudden you can't lift your own weapon, like that's embarrassing. And he knows it's going to take a ton of Madra, but he's like, that actually could work though. And if anything's going to take a lot of Madra, it's kind of up his alley, because he's got these insane pools in his core that we know he's continuing to grow because of the way he processes his Madra. It just forces his cores to grow. He needed a technique that worked inside of himself, filtering and separating Madra. That would be a spirit enforcer technique, and he had started looking through the Aurelius technique library before an idea occurred to him. He had a technique like that. The Heart of Twin Stars. It had been designed to split one core into two, but it was a spirit enforcer technique compatible with pure Madra. With a few modifications, he and Dross were sure they could get it to work. This is something that I don't feel I totally understand. His hunger Madra that's the main thing for his hunger Madra. He, I think, wants to separate it out. Is that the goal here? He needed a technique that worked inside of himself. Or is it him trying to do within himself what he eventually goes to Little Blue for help with? And does he think that he can split again and have another whole separate core that could process Hunger Madra exclusively? Is that what he is going to attempt to do to reinforce his arm? Jake says basically he's wanting to filter and purify the stuff he's taking in so it's compatible. Okay, isn't that pretty much what Little Blue manages to do for him? Is my question. Yeah, this is the moment, by the way, where he realizes how far he's come with the projects he's working on, and then starts thinking about how he's all alone and gets really depressed all over again. And I was like, buddy, I'm sorry. Because this is a moment where I'm like, yeah, you're all alone. Literally, this sucks. Jake says, yeah, he can't do it right until she helps. Jan disagrees. No, he wants to make his arm work like Jai Lung's spear without the side effects. Unless Jan's disagreeing with me. I can't tell. Yes, she is the key. So he uses, does this mean that he doesn't need to figure out how to develop the filter? Jan says time lag. I agree with Jake. Okay. Develop the Heart of Twin Stars into a proper filter. Does he manage to actually do that? Or is it all about Little Blue? Because it feels like it's mostly her that makes this work out. But I might have just kind of misunderstood exactly how this works. George says, yes, she helps him cheat. Okay. That's kind of how... I appreciate you using the word cheat, because that wasn't really the word I had in mind. I was going to say just fast forward, but kind of cheat is the correct word there. And that falls right in line with who Lindon is also, because he just manages to kind of skip over stuff a lot of the time. But I am honestly, as much as I'm happy for him that Little Blue helped him and that this worked, it worries me a little bit that he's dependent on her. And I think he worries about it as well. I'm hoping that the vibe he has here is more this is a great solution for now, while I figure out how to do this on my own. But I'm just because him getting dependent on Dross already made me a little nervous. And Dross is in his spirit most of the time. I mean, it's not like beings of greater power can't summon Dross out of him, so it's not foolproof. But it certainly feels like Dross is more protected. And Little Blue is just out here running around on 1,000-mile clouds having a good time. She is so much more vulnerable. And for him to create a technique that relies so much on her when she is just a being that's out and about just makes me really, really nervous. And obviously, Lindon's no fool. He's taking that into consideration himself. It's part of why he's afraid to push her when she's helping him in the first place, and she's clearly really tired. And he points out that if somebody were to nail him in his spirit in exactly the right way, when she is in the he keeps her in the void key most of the time, right? Or does he keep her in his soul space? But either way, he's like, she could die, you know, that she's vulnerable. He knows that. So he's thinking about how he couldn't help everybody who is out there about to fight some dread gods. And then he gets interrupted in these thoughts of frustration, a little bit of self-pity, but not unwarranted, by Akura, or Akura Charity. And Akura Charity is here to give him the prize that she promised at the end of the last section. And he asks for transportation to the fight with the Dread God, to which she's like, I mean, I can do that. I was going to give you the inheritance of an Archlord Soulsmith. Now, show of hands, everybody. How many of you were a little bummed that Lindon doesn't change his mind and take the inheritance instead? Because I won't lie, I was a tiny bit like, what? Dude, really? Take it. And soulsmith your fucking heart out. I want to see what you can do out here, man. I really am so curious about it. And like, I gotta admit, I'm low-key hoping Charity has that shit like bookmarked for him still. And that he'll do something bonkers and she'll be like, all right, so here's the thing I was going to give you. I'll give it to you as a good job for this thing you're doing right now. It was meant to be a prize for this, but here. Because I really, like, that hurt a little bit. And it clearly hurts Lindon. He has his soul so set on going to this fight. And I get why, you know, like the discovery that he's made about how the enemies can be turned into a power source. And there's this fight out there it's really compelling to me that he's not like, people are dying, I need to help. He really wants to, like, use these things as a power up. It's a battery. And that seems to be much more of the thing that's getting to him. But so I understand his motivation, and I won't even say I think he made the wrong decision. I don't think that, but she really found a thing that hurt me to give up personally. And I was just like, God. So yeah, he gets transported. She agrees to do this. And it's kind of neat, actually, because they have to take a few pit stops along the way. And they land somewhere that everything is on fire. It's the Firestone Roads, which I don't know how many of you are familiar, but Firestone was the name of like an auto repair chain here in the States and maybe primarily in the Northeast. I'm not sure. My dad worked for them for years, and he eventually got let go because he refused to lie to clients. So that distracted me a bit. I was like, Firestone. And Charity lets him walk around, and he can like either cycle the fire mantra that's in the air, the fire aura, or he can just explore, and he chooses to explore. And it's really neat. They found a boiling river filled with white hot fish. A family of fiery stags attending what seemed to be a cultural history lecture. And a 10-foot tall ash creature that recognized Lindon from the Uncrowned King tournament. Charity appeared in front of Lindon after he'd finished recording his voice into a construct for the ash monster. Lindon's being asked for his fucking autograph. That's what's happening. I could not stop laughing. A tree is like, yo, dude, sign my hat. Like, so good. I love that so much. The next stop was a web city of sacred spiders that found Dross fascinating. Then an ancient forest glade full of sylvan river seeds, which Lindon is just like noticing how Little Blue is very different from all of them, and she seems more distinct and more intelligent than them. Later on, he even can see little feet, because previously her bottom just sort of flared out into a dress shape, but now she's got feet. So she's still clearly like evolving. I kind of wondered if that was where things were going to end for her. And I don't know if that's a byproduct of simply consuming the scales that he gives her, or if there's more to it than that. And let's see. But they spent most of their time sitting in a restaurant watching massive shapes roll in the water beneath them and the clouds above them. So at this point, he asks Charity some questions. Whether or not she and Fury are the only sage in Herald, which, yes. He asks why that is, and she says that there's a balance and it would be dangerous to have too many individuals of a certain level at a time. And he is like, well, do you mean like balance with other monarch factions? Like, what do you mean balance? And she basically is like, well, you don't need to know that yet. You're an underlord. Shut up. I was like, ouch, but okay, fine. I do love too the bit where they're about to stop in somewhere ice cold, and she starts to be like, if you didn't prepare for cold weather, I guess you'll have to. And Lindon pulls out a coat and winter boots. Girl, you don't know who you're dealing with. He is Mr. Preparedness, okay? He'll be fine, I promise. I bet he's got a fucking scuba suit in there if he needs it. And eventually they get to this town that has been destroyed. And this is when they see the Wandering Titan, which is not fully awake. And apparently it has like a shell, like a turtle. And that is poking up out of the ocean looking like a weird sort of island. But his hand is fully out and like on the shore and has crushed this entire city, town, whatever. It's an amazing amount of damage for something that hasn't even fully awakened yet. And it's really intimidating. And I keep forgetting how huge dread gods are. I keep sort of having it in my head that they're like Godzilla sized, but it feels like they're like way bigger than that. As he says, something about how like they're essentially like a piece of landscape, which is hard for my brain to really grasp. It's hard for me to picture that. So Charity's talking about how they're definitely going to have to evacuate everybody, to which Lindon's like, dude, why wouldn't we try and stop it? Like, your mother did that before. To which she's like, first of all, grandmother. Second of all, her holdings around the world were taken or sabotaged while her attention was occupied. We've recovered some of them, but not all. It is very likely she lost more than she saved. Which, that's pretty awful. Like, and I asked at the time, because she says in her little bit to Ethan, I can't remember if it's a note or a recording or what, but she basically tells Ethan, I'll step in this one time, but that's it. And at the time I was like, what the fuck? Why just the one time? You're fine. Like, she gets out of it and she seems okay. This is why. There were other things going on that I didn't know about, and she wound up losing a lot in stepping in here. So then he realizes that there was like a reason that she did it this one time, to stop the dread gods from getting to the labyrinth. And Charity's like, that is true, but I don't even know what's inside, and you probably won't know like what it is they're after in theory for a while. And that's something else that you can work towards figuring it out. And he says, what happens if they reach it? Nothing, Charity said calmly. The defenses of the labyrinth are legendary. The dread gods usually can't locate it at all, as the entrances remain sealed, so they spend their time awake, wandering around satisfying their hunger. The labyrinth is secure, but the people living around it are not. It is still a mystery how one underlord opening an outer hatch for a handful of minutes caught the attention of the dread gods so far away, which we know exactly what the fuck happened. But it still seems so, like, I still don't really understand the reasoning behind what happened, because Machiel speeds things up essentially. He says as much to Suriel that he's like going to fast track Lindon and Fate. But I don't exactly know what the goal is there. Because it's sort of presented like Suriel fucked up and he's correcting her mistake. And it felt as if what he was doing was like, Lindon should be dead by now, and I'm gonna like make sure he's killed. But that was sort of what he seemed to be saying initially to her, and she was like resisting it, and then he came up with another way of handling it that wouldn't require the kid's death. I don't know. I should go back and reread that scene, but it felt like this was supposed to bring things back to an equilibrium that had been thrown out of whack. And the combo was Lindon going off of his plan because she had talked to him and like kind of shown him the future and given him a mission. And evidently him meeting Ethan like also gets it's two things that have been messed with, I think, because of Ethan's link to Osriel. And the fact that they met created this like much bigger sort of break in fate than was acceptable. Like if it had just been Suriel talking to Lindon, that alone would have been okay. If it had just been whatever was going on with Ethan and Osriel connection, that would have been okay. But the two of them meeting and getting involved in each other's lives fucked things up somehow. And so Machia was like interceding because of that. But I don't really, obviously, and I don't think I'm supposed to, I don't get what waking a dread god early does to help whatever it is they're worried about. So I don't know. It's like people are saying, let's see, Ofer is saying fast track Lindon's advancement to get him to leave Cradle faster. Okay. Huh. That didn't feel clear to me, if that's it. But I don't need to dwell on that right now. I still have so much more to get through. Okay. So, at this point, Charity had warned Lindon ahead of time that the Satian Empire was going to be on the scene. And it's like, are you sure you want to go? And he's like, yeah, I do. This is going to suck, but yeah, I do still want to go. She sort of smirks when he says that. And in the moment, I thought that she was smirking because she was proud of him for being willing to face these people after what happened and that he wasn't shying away from that. But then when we get there, I think she was smirking because she knew what she was going to do, which is to say they arrive. The Satian King sees her. She steps in and helps him like defeat a beast that's like huge and probably would have fucked him up pretty good before he beat it. He's thanking her and sees Lindon and is very tense, but is being on his best behavior with it. And she's like, hey, cool. So you're going to take care of my bud here. I'm going to go. And I feel like that's why she smiled to herself. That she knew she was going to abandon him to the Satian Empire. And when Lindon's like, yeah, I'm fine with it, let's go, she could tell he didn't really like properly appreciate the situation he was about to be in. And it is brutal. Like she makes the king promise that nothing's going to happen to Lindon. Essentially, she's like, my dad will be real pissed if he doesn't get to meet this Underlord. So don't let anything happen to him. But Lindon doesn't trust that guarantee at all, which I can respect. He's basically like, yeah, you've made that promise, but like, we know your kid is kind of a fucking loose cannon. And we know that woman is a little unstable. So I'm not putting all my faith in that, beside the fact that there could be a lot of like between the lines that you could find ways to like make me miserable without killing me. And I think he's smart, and he winds up going off on his own to collect bindings and experiment by himself. So he, by the way, as he's like seated and experimenting, he's made a little 1,000-mile cloud for Blue, which is such a great casual thing that we just hear how he's made this and it's not a big deal, when in the first book, finding 1,000-mile cloud is such a big deal. It's a treasure. And he's reached this point where he can just make one, which is bonkers. I love that. And this is when Little Blue is like trying to insist that she can help him somehow. And he's trying to protect her and not, ask anything of her. But she keeps sort of pushing it. And finally he says, what would happen if we added Little Blue's Madra to the heart of Twin Stars? Dross is like, that definitely wouldn't work. Not worth trying. Should we try it anyway? Let's try it. Which I really loved the way that went down. Dross is very entertaining to me. He's like a little kid sometimes with just like wanting to experiment with shit. And Dross does like a simulation and it seemed to work. So Lindon does it. And the first time, I think it doesn't quite work. Let's see. I'm trying to find the spot here. Yeah. Okay. It took so much of his concentration. Oh no, the first time it does work, that he didn't realize it had worked until all the power was gone. The blood essence went to his body, the life essence to his lifeline, and a trickle of pure Madra back into his core. Even his channels felt slightly healthier. But Dross says, ugh, I got some of its thoughts. It's so hungry, and it's in constant pain. I don't like pain. Don't make me feel it again. I'm very interested in that. The fact that Dross felt something of this creature, will that be constant? Will that happen every time? And will that matter? Is it simply going to be uncomfortable, but ultimately of no importance? Or is it going to be something that causes Dross irritation and causes him to like find an alternative way to process things so he doesn't have to go through this? Will Lindon find a way to do it that won't involve any sort of like emotional aspect? I don't know. So let's see. There's one more thing we could try, and concentrates on the latest version of the empty field, aka hollow domain. Him and Dross are sort of fighting over it, naming it, because he wants to say empty field because it goes with empty palm. Dross thinks hollow domain sounds cooler, but Lindon, I think, rightly thinks hollow domain sounds more like it goes with Athen's path. I would like it if it was something like void field, because that goes with like the void dragon. But who knows what they're going to land on. But he set up the high gold launcher construct they'd been using for practice, then triggered it and used his new technique. Madra flooded out of him, and with Little Blue's support, it was tinged more blue than white. The wave of Madra filled the room, cleansing everything except pure Madra. The launcher shot a striker technique of light and force, a beam that entered the zone of blue light and fizzled out instantly like a candle dunked in water. Awesome. But Little Blue is exhausted by this, and she keeps trying to be like, no, I can keep going. And he's like, it's fine. I need to take notes. But there's a sense of him like using the I need to take notes as a good excuse to give her some rest, when in fact, I think she sees through that a little bit. So finally, the Akura cloud ship arrives with Fury. Fucking Fury, man. This guy cracks me up. I enjoy the shit out of this guy. I feel like, in terms of people I would want to hang with, he's like number one, Hey everybody, welcome to Sky's Edge, like they're on a fucking vacation. Let's remember why we're here. We need to protect the survivors, clear out the Dreadbeast, secure the mine, and evacuate the citizens before the Titan wakes up. In a few days, we'll be joined by Abyssal Palace, so we'll get to fight them too. Until then, the bounty system works like we discussed. It's set up on the ship. If you don't know your teams, find Justice? No, Justice is still at home. Well, you can find somebody to tell you. Oh, and don't hurt your allies, okay? You can fight if you really want to, but make it an official duel with rules and everything. Abandoning a mission, fighting over bounties, or permanently injuring someone is a punishment. Kill anybody on our side, or betray us and I'll kill you. That's about it. Have fun! So, then he sees Lindon, and he grabs Lindon and is like, hey dude, we need to get you a team. And he grabs a cloud ship that's going by and pulls it toward him. And it's full of people Lindon knows, including Pride. And Fury's like, hey Pride, good to see you. You're not in charge anymore. Lindon's in charge. You're his number 2. Ouch. And Fury, it's like, I can't decide if Fury is unaware of how angry Pride is, or if he really just could not give any fewer fucks. I feel like it's a combo, but it's more on the... I feel like it's more the former than the latter. That he doesn't even notice. I think he's having such a good time that he doesn't register the reactions of people around him. Do you know what I mean? So Lindon notices Narusea, who seems really sort of like despondent. And this comes up a little bit later when he's alone with her. So yeah, he gets put in charge. And Fury basically takes off. And Lindon's really uncomfortable. He's put in charge here. But as he points out, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't know where they're going, what their mission is, anything. And he says as much. I don't know if it's appropriate. I don't know what's going on. Pride looked to him in disgust. What attitude is that? Raise your chin. Leading this team is an honor, and you should work to be worthy of it. And he throws Lindon a bounty board. So Pride explains that Fury makes things into games. He likes doing that. Teams get contribution points for contributing to our cause. There are no individual points. The team's score is pooled together, and the distribution of prizes is decided by the team's leader. So we find out that they have Tears of the Mother Tree, Interior Command Elixir. I don't know if we know what these things are. Gold Lion's Heart Pill. Low-grade Void Key. High-grade Void Key. Diamond Veins, which I'm pretty certain is what Yaren got as a prize, if I'm not mistaken. Divine Treasure. 1,000 Swords of Binding. Of Binding Light, my bad. So, here's what happens. Lindon loses his fucking mind. It's so good. You guys, I could not stop laughing. He interrupts Pride, who's still talking, and berating him, basically. Every second we waste is another point gone. You understand? We're losing points. How many of you have 1,000-mile clouds? Your hands! Raise them! I wish you could see how crazy you look right now, Dross said. I wish I could see it. Guys, I was listening to this, and the narrator does such a good job with everyone's voices and the panic in Lindon's voice. And then when Dross says, I wish you could see how crazy you look right now, I started laughing out loud. It was such a good delivery of the line, and it's such a perfect moment. So everyone but Narusea and the 2 Frozen Blade women raise their hands. So at this point, Lindon is like, all right, Here are the bindings I collected. Turn those in for points. There should be 46. The lowest level clouds are 20. Buy yourselves one each. Go hunting dread beasts with everyone else. Grace says we need everyone for our current assignment. No, we don't. Separate into teams of 2 and you 2. Please leave. Please. I'm begging you. Teams of 2. Pride, take courage. Grace, take Douji. Now, get another assignment each. If they won't let you take another one until our current mission is finished, then hunt dread beasts or forge scales. Now, Rosea and I will handle the assignment. This motherfucker is on it. On it. Do you hear me? He is so good at this. Fucking competence porn, okay? I just love it when people are good at what they're fucking doing. There is nothing hotter than somebody who is like competent at their shit. And Lindon is so filled with self-doubt all the time. But you give him a prize to work for, and that's all he sees, which is very dragon-like and very sort of like works with his hunger madra thing a little bit. He is a greedy dude in his way. He just wants things. All he can think about this is that everything could be his. He's not thinking about, how could I split this up? What would I have to give so-and-so? He's thinking literally all of this could be mine. To which I'm like, could it? Because I don't know that's true, bud. You may want to like slow your roll. You've got some pretty high level people on your ship. And if you don't share, that's not going to be pretty. So just for a second. However, despite all of that, he gives everybody assignments, and what I love so much about this is the fact that he wants to, like, his whole thing with Dross and the fact that he can model different people to fight Lindon, and therefore Lindon gets a really good sense of everything people are capable of and all of the tricks up their sleeve and their techniques. Lindon knows precisely the strengths and weaknesses of each of these people, despite the fact that he doesn't know some of them personally. He's fought a few of them, but not all of them. But he still knows. And so he's able to assign everyone to the best job for their ability. And that's part of why he brings Narusea with him. And Narusea is like, dude, they're going to be really pissed at you. What are you doing? Lindon's void key had opened again, and he manipulated aura and extended strands of Madra to flip open scripted boxes and pull out bindings and dead matter. I know what they're like. I'm sure they didn't listen to a word you said the entire time you were with them, and that's why you're with me. To which I'm like, again, I love it so much. He's like, I could see from your face that you were being ignored and treated like shit, and you're very valuable and talented, and I know that, and I'm not going to be an asshole and just let you fall to the wayside. So, welcome to the team. Dross was working to supplement his concentration, and his pure core was emptying like it had developed a leak as he assembled a construct and piloted the cloud ship at the same time, so his attention was barely on his words as he spoke. You also have the skills I need right now. You're faster than they are, your perception extends farther, and your path is perfect for rescue. Seiya looks at him and is like, yo, you're pretty hot right now. You should do this for Yaren. And he like doesn't even hear her because he's so focused. And I'm like, she's not wrong. Yaren and I have that in common. We get turned on by a dude who is in charge because he knows what he's doing. There are so many dudes out there who try to pull this sort of thing, but they don't know what they're doing. And that is just embarrassing and the opposite of hot. But when somebody genuinely knows what they're doing, they don't have to posture. They just do the thing. And that's what's so hot. So he's over here piloting this thing at top speed and building a construct behind him in his mind because he's a fucking maniac. This is so good. Lindon's dead matter was all in place, and he let the cloud ship's speed fall, devoting himself to soulsmithing. Every piece of the construct floated in his pure madra, and he forged them without tools, shaping them according to the image in his mind. Each binding shone in his spirit like a star, and Dross's calculations prevented the slightest mistake. The spear of the Summer King went opposite the Red Dragon's breath. The Storm Lotus opposed the Titan Slayer axe, and the Grave's last word matched against the Bloodwash wave. All 6 striker techniques reacted with one another, sending off sparks of many colors, settling into an equilibrium with other bindings in dead matter and his own Madra. It was soul-smithing that should have taken weeks of testing, measuring, and planning. Guys, can you imagine if Fisher Gesha was on this cloud ship with him, what she would say? She would be in that place that she loves, where she's simultaneously like really impressed and also mad at him for taking this crazy risk and doing something that's like reckless a little bit. But then she'd go back to being impressed. I wish she could see him right now. This is so badass. This, you know what this makes me think of? The equivalent to like my life, and I bet some of you can relate to this also. If you work in food service, there comes a point, and it's this perfect state that you can reach sometimes. It happens in all customer service, but I think of it most with food service because a kitchen is sort of like an organism. And there'll be a night where things have been somewhat brisk anyway, and you're all sort of on it, and you're feeling good, and you're high energy, and things are going okay. And then somebody comes in with a party of like 25, and they didn't make a reservation. And you're like, all sort of for a second, like, oh my God. And then it registers for you all that this could be a lot of tips. This could be good money. This could be great. And all of a sudden you all just go, and you are a team, and it is amazing. And you're just like doing 6 things at once, remembering orders without having to write shit down, able to go into the kitchen and shit is ready for you in a way that it's not always ready for you. And everybody's drinks come out right, and everybody's orders are right. And it's just like those nights you finish it and you're like, how did I do that? And why can't every day be like this? And I hope to God this is something that Lindon can just be like. I know that this is a special case, and part of it is that he has forgotten his doubt of himself because he is so fucking goal-oriented. But I hope that he can summon back this sort of, like, focus again later, when this isn't necessarily the situation he's in anymore. We'll see. All of this to say, he makes a cannon, and there's this dread beast out here. This thing, it's attacking a fortress. And even as he's seeing this dread beast and the fortress and everything, all Lindon can think about, how many missions could his team complete per day? 2? How many dread beasts could they defeat? How many were there? That's all he can think about. It's just, he has gone a little crazy. Over 100 gold dreadbeasts tore at the sides of the fortress. The fat, rotting, man-like creature opened its jaws and spewed red flames across the fortress wall. They spattered like liquid, some fires extinguishing but others burning on. This creature gave off the pressure of an underlord at least. So Lindon builds a cannon, real quick, no big deal, like you do. Pulls that shit out, and shoots this motherfucker in the head. And it's like, oh, that hurt. God, what the fuck? And he's like, all right, one more. Cracks his neck, pulls that shit up before it falls apart, forces his spirit through it again. Giant's head explodes. Done. Done. The thing is dead. Overlord level, it's dead already. He hasn't even landed the fucking ship yet. It's already dead. Meanwhile, Saya, she killed 2 flying things, but she's attacking 2 more. And just like, Lindon turns and is like, ugh, and just kills those 2 real quick. Again. Just like nothing. It's just like annoying, you know? So she lands and she's looking around like, good God. And then it's like, all right, I'm going inside. Lindon tossed her another construct, one that he'd prepared beforehand. Break this if you need help. I'll clean up out here. I am interested to see what this does. If it like sends a message or if it just gives like a pulse of energy off that signals to him or what. I'm sure we'll see. And he drops to the ground, pulls out Wave Dancer, that sword, and he goes to town on these motherfuckers. The Archlord Flying Sword sliced Trugold Dreadbeast in half with a single swing, as did the thin bars of black flame he sent slashing out. Which I love thin bars of black flame, it being said specifically, because there's something about the precision of that which feels like a real advancement on his part in technique. You know, he's not just pouring all this energy out when it's not necessary. It's a laser focused thing that he's just using as like a knife in a way, which I think feels much more, what's the word I want? It's like delicate, but in a way that indicates strength rather than weakness. It's really more advanced feeling, you know? At the same time, he tapped into his soul fire, using the blood aura in the giant's body to pull apart the flesh in its chest. Meat and tendons tore away from the binding he sensed near its heart. Hurry, Lindon thought. I have to hurry. If even one prize escaped his grasp, he was going to weep blood. Again, Lindon, you aren't going to be able to take everything without absolutely fucking everyone else over. I don't want you to do that, my friend. As much as I want you to have it all, you know I do. I want you to piss people off even less. Like, you already have enemies out there that are far beyond what you can deal with. I don't need you making more enemies because you're getting greedy. There are enough awesome prizes that you will be able to get some good shit. Let's say if you do get everything, which I doubt, but let's say you do. Your team wins all of it. There's great shit in there that will be compensation without you robbing them of compensation. Don't do that, man. Don't be that way. I'm just saying, for my sake, okay? Just slow your roll a tiny bit. So I just can't get over this. Like, it's hard for me to imagine how long it's going to take, because he just says to her, I'll clean up out here. Like, he's going to take all of these creatures on his own. And I think he is. And how many? I'm trying to see exactly how many it's described. Over 100 gold dread beasts. There it is. The mission parameters were to rescue a few key members of the sect who had made this fortress their home. Any further sacred artists rescued would mean bonus points, but the situation was more complicated than it seemed on the surface. A protective script covered the outer wall of the fortress, which was why the Overlord Dreadbeast hadn't killed everyone yet. Neither the fire nor the army of monsters had penetrated the outer wall of the fortress yet, but they would soon. If he engaged the Overlord in battle, the golds would make it impossible to win quickly. Already, flying dreadbeasts were diving to attack their ship. The full team would have surely swept the battlefield clean with minimal risk, but their safest options would also have taken the longest. So he's going to, I am assuming, I'm wondering exactly what the members of the sect who are inside are going to make of the fact that he killed the Overlord Dreadbeast, because hopefully Narusea can go inside, gather them all, and bring them out to continue fighting and help him out so that he isn't left with 100 of these creatures purely to himself. I feel like it seems initially like he can handle them all, but I am not as confident that he's going to be able to keep that up. We'll see. Although I have a feeling that the next chapter we're going to jump to the POV of a different character, because everybody else is out there training with their sages and we need to be kept up on what they're doing. But I am really curious to see, like, how this situation winds up. As of right now, it looks like he just swept the thing, no problem, in like no time, which I sort of hope is true. You know, sometimes I'm a fan of things not being as easy as they looked like they were because of the subtlety of that. But in this case, if it's exactly as easy as it looked, that's fine. I will be not upset about that, just for the record. But I am curious, not only what like kind of assistance Narusea will give him and everybody else will give him, I'm interested in what Pride will make of this, because I feel like he just, you know, he can't be pleased is the problem. He wants Lindon to come in and like have respect and pride for the fact that he has been given charge of this team. But then when Lindon starts to take that to heart and really give orders, Pride feels a way about that too. It's just, you know, this guy can't be made happy. So if he hears that Lindon went in there and did a mission with just him and Narusea and just fucking handled it within like 5 minutes, will he be impressed or will he be pissed for reasons unknown? Because he'll find a reason to be pissed. I'm not worried about that. I'm curious. I'm very eager to find out. So that's the end of the chapter. I think I told you all that I'm going to be covering like around 40 pages, which looks like it's about 2 chapters per episode going forward. It's not always 2. A couple of sections, it looks like there's going to be 3 chapters, but it's going to be exactly enough episodes for the number that Andy booked. So it works out perfectly, and I'm very happy about that. So I'm going to be able to keep doing it at the slightly slower pace. So that's cool. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thank you guys again so much for listening. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you, Andy, for commissioning this. And I will be seeing you all again soon with a new episode Tuesday. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.